A very good morning, students. So in today's class we will be learning about the last out of the four fundamental operations for integers, and that is division. So let's see how it goes. Now, similar to your multiplication of integers, division of integers also possesses certain rules, okay, but less than that were present in your multiplication of integers. So the first rule is rule number 1: the quotient obtained by dividing a negative integer by a positive integer or vice versa is always negative. So let me explain this to you. So if you divide a negative integer by a positive integer, then the quotient you are going to get is always negative. Or say when it comes to the word called vice versa, it means if you divide a positive integer by a negative integer, at that time also the quotient will be negative. Here we are not considering the remainder, we are simply focused upon your quotient. Okay, so mathematically if you want to express this, it will come up to be minus a divided by b equal to a divided by minus b, which will gives you a negative quotient. So we will take one example also here. Suppose a is minus 8 and b equal to, then a divided by b is going to give you minus 2, which is a negative integer. Alright, now alternatively you can also state this rule as when we divide a positive integer by a negative integer, or say vice versa, we first divide them as whole numbers. Now I hope all of you know what a whole number is, and then put a minus sign before the quotient. So suppose we are dividing minus 8 and 2 now. Now while dividing, you consider them to be only 8 and 2. Forget what type of integers they are. Then you find out the quotient, which is your 2, and then you place a negative sign right before the quotient. That is your first rule. Going to the second rule. Rule number 2: the quotient of two negative integers is always positive. Mathematically it will come up to be minus a divided by minus b will give you a positive quotient. Now when you divide minus a by minus b, it is also equal to dividing a by b, which are both positive. Okay, so example of this is minus 6 divided by minus 2 will give you 3. Now alternatively, we can also state this rule as when we divide a negative integer by a negative integer, we first divide them as whole numbers and then we'll put a positive sign. So again, these two rules are very simple, so I hope you all have understood this. Unlike the other three fundamental operations that we have done, division of integers doesn't have any specific property with a specific name. You will come to know the reason later on, but we have only two properties to discuss here without any particular name. So here comes the first property. First property says that for any integer a divided by 0 is not defined, while 0 divided by a equals 0, where a is not equal to 0. Now, the second part of this property where it says 0 divided by a equals 0. I'm very sure that all of you have understood this, but the first part, a divided by 0 is not defined. I'm going to explain this to you. Now, this you will be needing in your higher classes, so you can take it as an additional information for today, but trust me, you will be requiring this later on. So now if we want to express a divided by 0 in terms of fraction. How we are going to write it down? A by 0, where 0 denotes your denominator, right? Okay. And what is the value of 0? 0 has no value. And if I ask you the possible opposite in mathematics of 0 will be, it is not a number, it is infinite. And what is the meaning of infinite? Countless, right? Now, whenever we are writing any digit in its denominator, it can be anything, it can be 0, it can be 2, it just denotes the opposite of 2, or say inverse of 2. Alright, I'm going to write this again. Suppose I'm writing 1 by 2. Alright, so that means this 2 here denotes the reverse of the real meaning of the word 2. Alright, similarly, if I write 0 here in the place of denominator, it denotes the meaning that is opposite to the value of 0, which will be infinite. Now, since we cannot define infinity, therefore we consider infinity as not defined. Hence, whenever we are taking an integer a and we are dividing it by 0, the answer will be not defined. I hope this part is clear to you. Then next, the second property, for any integer a divided by 1 equal a. Now, this is a very, or maybe you can say the most simplest property you have learned so far. A can be any integer, it can be a positive, it can be a negative. So, if you divide any integer by 1, obviously you are going to get the integer itself. Now, this much was all about the properties of division of integers. Now, based on what you have learned today, as well as what you have learned in your earlier classes, you are all set to do the questions of the last exercise of this chapter, that is exercise 1.4. And that's all for today's class. Thank you.